Hey everyone, it's Stephanie from Vegan What, and I am here today with Glenna Anderson. She is a mental health therapist, and today we want to talk about mental health and why it is so important to take care of your mental health. Now, I want to go ahead and let Glenna introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself before we start diving into some of the topics.
So thank you, Stephanie, so much for having me. Like you said, my name is Glenna Anderson. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have a private practice in Torrance, California, where I specialize in treating adults with anxiety-based disorders. And my whole theme is therapy is a lifestyle. It's the idea of addressing your mental health before it becomes mental illness. And so I'm really big on making sure that people understand very everyday and very practical tips that they can include in their life to make it so that they're not running into these huge emotional pitfalls.
Awesome. So one of the first topics I want to get into is what mental health looks like and what depression specifically looks like, because I've dealt with depression in the past, and I know a lot of people feel like you need to look a certain way or you need to be going through something in order to be depressed. So if you've lost a family member, then fine, that's justifiable to being depressed. But if you like broke up with a boyfriend or something, and you're just having a really hard time getting back on track after that breakup, then people feel like, well, you shouldn't be so depressed because, I mean, it's just breaking up with a boyfriend. You move on, you get on with your life. So I always found that fascinating, how we describe what depression looks like and what it's supposed to look like. And I feel like sometimes when we do that, we don't realize that somebody who looks very happy and is having a good time is suffering from depression, and we don't know how to help them. So can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. First of all, depression does manifest differently in different people. For some people, they oversleep. They'll sleep. They're just super lethargic. They don't want to do anything, and they'll oversleep. For some people, they can't sleep at all. Like they just cannot sleep. Some people have a huge appetite and they just eat. Some people have no appetite at all. At the very basis of it, it's an overall melancholy, very sad feeling, very low motivation that lasts for a period of time. And the time is what we determine, or how we determine whether it's major depression, whether it's connected to like bereavement or a physical health issue, or whether it's mild, moderate, or severe. It's the time. So if you have a person that's having a depressive episode for a week straight, where they have no motivation, poor hygiene, they're not communicating with anyone, they're isolating from other people, that's probably like a severe depressive episode. Whereas you might have someone who has maybe mild depression and they're somewhat functioning, like they're still hanging out with their friends, they're just kind of not themselves, or they're still going to work, but they're not really as productive. Presenteeism is actually a huge issue within the workforce, whereas people think absenteeism, like, oh, people are missing work for whatever reason. Actually coming to work while you're battling mental health and not appropriately dealing with it is actually a really big issue. Employers lose a lot of wages. They waste a lot of money basically paying for people to be there when they're not really at their tip-top condition. So what does it look like? It's different for everybody, but at the very basis of it, it's that feeling of sadness that doesn't just go away. So it's not like I'm sad for a couple hours and then I can watch my favorite movie or call my friend and then I kind of feel better.
Right. So thank you for clarifying that. I think it's so important to realize that there's different looks of depression. So you can look like anybody and still be depressed. It doesn't look a certain way. But I also want to get into the importance of mental health, because as a vegan, I talk a lot about physical health and feeling your best from the inside out with what you put into your body. But I feel like in the vegan community, we don't talk a lot about mental health. We just feel like, well, you're eating better, so you should feel better. But I know from personal experience and from talking with other vegans, that just veganism and eating right and eating healthy doesn't just wash away everything that you're going through. You still have stress, and you can still have depression, and there's different things that are going on throughout your day that you're not even realizing, but you feel like, well, I'm eating better, so I should be feeling better. So what's wrong with me?
So there is some truth to that. If you are eating better, then yes, you probably will feel better. You'll probably feel lighter. You'll probably feel just healthier all the way around. Your body will function better because you're eating more plant-based things that are kind of flow through your system, drinking more water instead of sugary beverages. So there is some truth to that, but you're absolutely right in what you're saying, and that's not the be all and end all. So two pieces to that. Number one, if you are newly vegan, I know this happens to a lot of people who are newly vegan, and you're not eating enough. The symptoms of not eating enough actually mimic depression. And so there are times when you're just plain hungry, like your body is just exhausted and you're hungry. And again, that low grade lethargic feeling, sometimes that fatigue, like I just don't have any energy. I'm tired all the time. That actually feels like mild depression, but really you just haven't mastered the whole vegan diet. And so you're not putting enough into your system. So that could be one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is, like you said, someone really is dealing with some real mental health issues. They could even possibly be dealing with mental illness, and they're trying to address it by saying, I'm going to be vegan and that's going to make me feel better. Nothing is going to make you feel better except addressing your mental health issues. That's the bottom line. If you are dealing with anything in mental health, then you have to tackle it head on. So sometimes that's different for everyone. For some people, it's you could read a self-help book, you could do a couple of workshops, and you'll be okay. You know, for some people, they can talk to a friend or talk to somebody that's kind of been through something similar, and then they're okay. And other people need to sit down and meet with a therapist. I mean, that's why we have professionals. You know, if you had a trick knee, then you would go talk to a doctor. Or if you had a cavity, you would talk to a dentist. So if you have emotional issues that are impairing you to the point where you're noticing that you're not yourself, you're having trouble with school, work, interpersonal relationships, you should probably sit down and talk to someone.
Exactly. Yes, thank you. And thank you for talking about the importance of eating enough, because I find myself talking to a lot of new vegans or ex-vegans, and a lot of what they'll tell me is, well, they'll say, oh, I tried veganism for like a week or two and I just couldn't do it. And then I'll ask them, well, what did you eat? And it's a lot of salads, maybe a smoothie here or two. And you're like, yeah, how are you expecting to survive on that?
Right.
It's not enough calories. So they're just not eating enough and giving up, which is understandable because you're hungry. You need to eat. So I think that's really important. But I didn't realize that not eating enough mimicked mild forms of depression. So I think that's even more important for people to realize that, hey, like I need to make sure that I'm getting enough fuel in my body because I'm in some way, shape, or form depressing my body and myself by not feeling it.
It tricks your body. So I don't want anybody to hear this and say, oh, if I don't eat enough food, I'm going to get depressed. Like, right. That's not what I'm saying. But that feeling of being, I don't have energy. I'm just like, I have low motivation. That feeling is similar to the feeling that comes with depression. So if you're not eating enough and you are having some feelings of depression, you're going to compound it because you're not giving your body any fuel or anything to work off of.
Right.
But not eating enough if you're vegan doesn't make you depressed. Point of clarification.
You just feel like it. I'm depressed, I'm hungry, feed me. But you're not technically depressed.
Exactly.
All right, so I also wanted to talk about, because you have amazing videos on your Instagram, short little clips of just mental health tips, which I think is awesome. And one of your video tips, you talked about rest and the importance of rest. And I feel like as an entrepreneur and just anyone in general who's working consistently, when we have some downtime and we're not working, it's often looked down upon as laziness. If you decide to like sit down and watch some TV and just zone out for a little while, then people are like, oh, you're lazy. Yeah. You need to be doing something. You need to be hustling, grinding. Who has time for rest? Maybe on the weekends, but there's no importance put upon people getting enough rest.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And in that video, what I talked about was that when you're doing physical labor, if you are laying bricks, you know what I mean? If you are like a mover and you're picking up couches and refrigerators all day long, you can see when you're expending physical physical energy. And it's much more socially acceptable for someone to say, I'm going to sit down and rest. But for those of us that have jobs or businesses or anything where you're thinking all day long, you can't see how much energy that you're spending when you're thinking. And so you have to take time to rest. I don't care if you have to do it mechanically. I don't care if you have to say every day at 7 o'clock, that's it. Computers off, phones down, TV's off, and I'm going outside for a walk. It's just like when you're taking a test and you put your hands up, like drop your hands up, like hard stop, until it becomes more organic. But you have to rest. And you're like you said, it's not being lazy. It's being smart, because when you rest and you give your mind a chance to walk away from something, you're actually more productive, and you're actually, you come up with better ideas. And when you come back to it, you can focus better, and it's more rewarding. When you think about it, when you're plowing away at something for hours at a time, you start to resent it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hate looking at this spreadsheet, or I hate looking at this book that I'm trying to write. But if you write for an hour or two, or work on something for an hour or two, and then walk away from it and do something that you can appreciate. And what I said in the video is rest is different for everybody. So for some people, it's going to sleep. For some people, it's staying awake and reading a magazine. For some people, it's going out with their friends, and just getting completely away from the house and work and the office and kids and spouses and whatever, all the things that require your attention and some level of responsibility. So you have to determine what brings you rest, and then you have to actually do it.
Yes. Thank you for touching upon that, because I feel like people really need to hear that, especially entrepreneurs, because I feel like when you're not at a 9 to 5, you just feel like you're constantly working, because there's no like off time. It's just go, 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 go.
You have to make off time.
Yep.
There's all kind of memes floating around, and there was one that said, I don't stop when the clock stops or something, but I stop when it's done. And there's some truth to that, because it speaks to having a certain type of work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna have a hard stop when the sun goes down. I mean, okay, like for myself, I'm in private practice, I'm in a doctoral program, but before that, I have a husband and 2 small kids. So I cannot be a complete workaholic. I have to have a hard stop, and I just have to accept that, hey, if my business doesn't accelerate, the way that the next person does, like a single person that doesn't have the same responsibilities as me, I won't say as much, but the same type of responsibilities, then I just got to accept it. That's that. Like I can't work day in and day out, because even when I stop working, I still got to turn around and do reading and write papers, because I'm back in school. So I have to make a choice to say, okay, if I'm not Speedy Gonzalez in terms of business and all these other things, then, so be it. But there's other aspects to my life that, are pulling me in different directions that I have to be attentive to, including myself.
Exactly. Yes. So I want to touch on like a touchy subject as far as mental health and speaking to a therapist. Mm-hmm. I know in our community, in the Black community, it is looked down upon to seek therapy. And I know when I was younger and I was suffering through depression, I still had those feelings from my community that, no, you got to be strong. There are people, our ancestors went through so much more than us, and they didn't, they were able to make it through. And I've heard that so many times, and you just feel like this guilt of, but I really need to talk to someone. I really feel like I need some help. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people, especially men, just don't feel like, hey, I can seek out therapy, or my community is going to look down upon me and I'm going to be seen as weak and not strong enough. And I feel like there has to be a way that we can like stop this and make people realize how important just talking to someone sometimes is for you, how much help that can give you.
You're absolutely right. There's a stigma around mental health in general. And then in our community, Black people, we have so much against us. We have so many societal things, whether it's our hair, our skin tone, our lips, our body shape, historical ideas that have been placed on us that weren't accurate, but like we're lazy or just all types of different things that as a culture we have to contend with, and as individuals we have to decide what we're going to accept and what we're not going to accept. But there is absolutely a stigma in our community. There's also the added pressure of, if you are a Christian or of religious beliefs, that, oh, you should just have more faith. And what's the saying? If you're going to worry, don't pray. If you're going to pray, don't worry. And it's like, well, it's sort of, not when you're dealing with generalized anxiety disorder. Like, you pray on the way to therapy, because this is a condition where, you need to sit down and talk to somebody. And you're absolutely right. I was looking at the statistics recently where I believe, don't quote me, but I know it was 6.6% of African-American men had accessed mental health resources between 2008 and 2012. And I want to say the number was, I can't remember exactly, maybe around less than 40% of African-American women between 2008 and 2012 had accessed mental health services. And so that is a drop in the bucket. There's just no reason. And then especially with the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, which who knows what's happening to that with our political climate right now. But with that, it pretty much guaranteed that every single person had some form of mental health or behavioral health built into their insurance. And so now it's not something that you have to go outside and go find it and figure out how am I going to pay for it. But we're trying to get what's called mental health parity. So we're trying to make it so that mental health and physical health are treated the same. So the same way that there's an expectation that once a year you're going to get a physical, twice a year you're going to go to the dentist, at least once or twice a year you're going to sit down with a mental health professional. So on a larger scale, there are some efforts to normalize it. And then within our community, how do we address it? We have to keep talking about it. Yeah. Everybody has to open up and say, yeah, I've seen a therapist, and just normalize it. And then it's like, oh, you went? Okay, well, if you went, maybe I'll try it. And then it starts to spread like wildfire, and it starts to become something that, instead of, how in our community be like, Black people don't do that. Yeah. Instead of it being under that category, it's like, oh no, yes, we do. Yes, we do. We brunch, we go on cruises, and we go to therapy. Yes, these are all things yes. within our toolbox that we access whenever we want to.
Yes, that's awesome. And I can't wait until we get to that point where it's just normal to just talk to someone and work out our issues. Yeah. But like in the meantime, we'll just keep trying to spread the message, and hopefully this video helps people be more receptive to speaking to someone and really taking their mental health seriously. But just want to wrap up this awesome video. I just want to give you a chance to give all of us watching, like, some simple daily tips that we can do to improve our mental health and just really make steps and strides towards living a healthier life mentally as well as physically.
So, like I said, my whole theme is therapy is a lifestyle. It's the idea of addressing your mental health before it becomes mental illness. Mental health is your overall state of psychological well-being. Mental illness is a collection of symptoms that impair your how you think about people, how you feel about yourself, your beliefs, so on and so forth. That is the quick and dirty definition. There's always somebody that's like, shit, didn't say this. Quick and dirty definition. So in terms of addressing your overall mental health, I'm a firm believer in you need something to look forward to. You need something that you're kind of working on right now. And in that, you need something that brings you joy. If you have no hope, then it's really hard to function. If you're just floating along day by day, no real plans for the future, it's really hard to think, like, what am I going to do next? Like, what's the point of behaving? Why should I not steal? Why should I eat right if you're not forward thinking? But I don't want people to be so forward thinking that they're ignoring what's happening right in front of them. So I believe in having something that you're working towards, and I believe in having something rewarding right now. And that could be feeding the homeless. It could be adult coloring books. It could be anything. It could be every I don't watch a whole lot of TV because I got kids and a doctorate program, but I'm gonna watch Power, you know, and nobody's gonna stop me. And that's my something that I enjoy, and you will not take that away from me. Or once a week, I'm gonna have that ice cream, or I'm going to go walking at the beach or something. But have something that you're looking forward to, and then have something that you're doing in the now that brings you joy, something that you really enjoy doing. It can be personal, it can be shared with a group of people, however you want to do it. But just have something that brings you joy.
That's awesome. So thank you so much, Glenna. I just feel like this was so valuable, and I really hope that people just take this message and really apply it to their life and are able to really live like a healthy mental lifestyle. Like you said, make it a lifestyle. But I just want to thank you so much for joining me with this video. And if you want to, if people want to find you, how do they find you?
So I am Glenna LCSW at Instagram and Glenna Anderson LCSW on Facebook. And my website is GlennaAndersonLCSW.com.
All right. So thank you so much, Glenna.
Thank you.